from Copacabana Beach, just days away from the Olympic Games here in Rio.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And with the Olympics off and running and Seven showing them on all three channels, it's no surprise the network Sunrise was partying last week as D-Day approached. And it being Brazil, they were naturally down at the beach to bring us bums, breasts, bikinis and near-naked bodies.
Well, hello boys. Yes, welcome to Rio and Copacabana Beach. Samantha Armitage, your wish has come true. As you quite crudely put it yesterday, you wanted more eye candy.
Yes.
Well,
look what we got for you.
Thank you guys. Them's apples.
Is that good enough?
That could be the wrong terminology, but anyhow.
Yes, fantastic it was. And in fact, it was so good, they came back several times in the broadcast for more of the same.
Right now, Eddie is down on the beach with some hot Brazilians.
Well, Koshi and Nat, it's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
And Edwina's job was to bring us yet more eye candy, dressed up as a story, of course, as she went on a lame search for the girl from Ipanema.
Lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking.
There's no shortage of tall, tan, young and lovely around here. Pedro, you spend a lot of time at the beach. Have you seen the girl from Ipanema?
Yeah, I definitely have seen the girl from Ipanema. There are a lot of them around here.
And next day, Sunrise rounded some up, so that their male viewers, who aren't quite so numerous on commercial breakfast TV, did not miss out.
Also, we got so many complaints just having blokes behind us yesterday that we've squared up the ledger today with some of Copacabana's finest.
There you go. So, you asked for it, we brought it to you.
That's what we're here to do.
All of this, of course, was taking place on Rio's famous ocean front, which is so polluted that news.com.au told us
not even the sand is safe. Samples from the golden beaches at Copacabana and Ipanema revealed high levels of viruses, which recent studies have suggested can pose health risks.
And also at Copacabana was the ABC's Mary Guerin, who was there to report on all that filth. But no trivial stuff like bums for her. Except perhaps she should have looked behind her.
For the Olympic athletes and for tourists who are arriving, and indeed for the people of Rio, there's more bad news today with the release of a 16-month study commissioned by the Associated Press that indicates that the levels of harmful viruses in the water is actually higher now than it was last year.
Golden rule for reporters, always check what's in the background. But now, to more serious matters, and a cartoon that's had everyone talking and a lot of people up in arms.
Bill Leak cartoon in The Australian, an attack on Aboriginal people, Indigenous leader says.
Bill Leak accused of racism in insulting cartoon on Indigenous parenting.
Yes, the Australian's chief bomb thrower has done it again, with Bill Leak provoking complaints to the Press Council over this confronting cartoon.
You'll have to sit down and talk to your son about personal responsibility. Yeah, righto. What's his name then?
The outrage began as soon as the cartoon was published, with ABC Melbourne presenter John Fain calling it blatantly racist and declaring that
the editor or whoever else thought it was appropriate to publish this cartoon this morning has some answering to do.
And scores of people agreed with him, sending social media on Thursday morning right off the dial.
This is one of Australia's most influential newspapers today. Absolutely racist. Absolutely inexcusable.
Shame on Bill Leak and The Australian. There is no place for such racism in Australia.
Who needs One Nation or Reclaim Australia when press like The Australian publishes racist propaganda like this?
But before long, the Australian's editor-in-chief, Paul Whittaker, was wading in, springing to his man's defence and claiming
Bill Leak's confronting and insightful cartoons force people to examine the core issues in a way that sometimes reporting and analysis can fail to do.
The Australian backed that up with an editorial next day, headlined
Family failure is the root cause,
which proclaimed, true to form,
we make no apology. Bill Leak's cartoon was meant to confront.
And Bill Leak didn't back down either, also going into print in the Oz to accuse his critics of tantrum throwing, name-calling and abuse, and CTAD, or chronic truth aversion disorder, before going on Sky News to tell Chris Kenny how shocked he was by the reaction.
And I'm astonished at the vehemence of the response to this cartoon. I really am. In a lot of outback Indigenous communities, children are brought up in the most appalling conditions. There's massive drug and alcohol problems amongst the parents, and incredible levels of violence. And these children are very, very badly neglected. And this puts these poor kids in this sort of cycle of despair. And they finish up in hell holes like the Don Dale Juvenile Detention Centre. And you have to say it's hardly surprising. I'm not saying that all Aboriginal children are in that situation. I'm not saying that all Aboriginal parents are like that. But that's what I've been accused of doing.
It's a fair point the cartoon is supposedly trying to make. Judge for yourself if Leek succeeds. But it is extremely offensive, and it arguably does vilify an entire race. And it's worth remembering that some of Leek's past cartoons are even worse. Like this one from 2006, for example.
Rapes out? Bashings out? This could set our culture back by 2,000 years.
Or this one from the same period.
Sheilas, you give them an enriching cultural experience, and what thanks do you get?
If those don't brand all Indigenous men as drunken thugs and rapists, I don't know what would. More recently, Leek has drawn a number of extremely offensive cartoons about Islam, most of which feature severed heads, like this one.
So this comedian, he gets drunk, thinks he's walking into the Laugh Factory in Vegas. Turns out he's walking into the mosque. What a schmuck. Tell ya, he won't be making no culturally insensitive jokes no more.
If ever a cartoonist went out of his way to offend, Bill Leek is your man. But let's go back to last week's cartoon, which caused so much trouble, and find out what Leek's fellow cartoonists think about it. The Telegraph's Warren Brown recently drew this very different cartoon, also about those kids in NT detention, which focuses on how Indigenous people have been treated in the past. Yet Brown believes Leek's cartoon was powerful and not racist, although we can see why others might think so. And he adds,
"There's always a problem with depicting Indigenous people in cartoons because grotesque caricature has such a poisonous history in Australia. But then what happened to those kids in jail, and what happened before they got there in some cases, is grotesque."
Multi-award-winning cartoonist Peter Nicholson, who's been published in The Australian, The Age and The Financial Review, also defends Leek, saying,
"No cartoon can paint the full picture, but this makes a valid point. I don't think it's fair to call it racist."
But Kathy Wilcox, who works for Fairfax, is a lot more critical.
Bill claims to be the great revealer of the truth. Only he dares to say what the rest of us deny, that Aboriginal people are responsible for their own social disadvantage. The trouble with that is it ignores some fundamental truths about how they came to be disadvantaged.
Wilcox calls Leek's cartoon unhelpful, racist and like something out of the last century. But, dislike it as she does, she concludes,
"I still defend his right to say it."
And frankly, so do I. But, in the great tradition of free speech, which we defend, we offer you this take on Bill Leek's work via Vice from artist Dan Drobick.
"You'll have to sit down and talk to your employee about personal responsibility." "Yeah, righto. What's his name then?" "Huge racist head."
And we take that as a comment. And some of Dan Drobick's other cartoons are more offensive than that. But now, to other matters, and the crazy Pokemon craze, which may well have peaked with the public, but is still going strong in the media, who are as desperate as anyone to find Pokemon wherever they look.
Woman dies in Pokemon hit and run.
Killed and dragged 70 metres along a road by a hit-and-run driver as she played Pokemon Go, while her devastated friend watched on.
Just over a week ago, a 22-year-old Sydney woman, Tanamai Naylor, was killed on a pedestrian crossing in Melbourne when she was run down by a man in a stolen car, which police allege was travelling at more than 100 kilometres an hour and had just run a red light.
All she did was just walk across a pedestrian crossing legally and has unfortunately paid with her life because of someone else's behaviour.
The tragic accident was reported properly and soberly in Melbourne's Herald Sun, but by the time news reached Sydney and Brisbane, the media were far more interested in the Pokemon angle, with the Courier Mail grabbing this ghoulish headline.
Mobile madness sparks warning as smartphone zombies become
Walking Dead.
Under which the Courier Mail told readers that the woman had
died crossing a road in Melbourne while playing Pokemon Go.
The paper then allowed the Pedestrian Council's Harold Scrooby to complain.
The providers of these games take no responsibility. Who is to blame when a young kid steps out onto the road in a trance and is killed?
So, was the story actually right? Answer, no. As almost all the media, except the Courier Mail, revealed at some point in their story,
Ms Naylor had her phone in her pocket when she was hit.
So, she wasn't playing the game, or looking at her phone, or in a trance at all, as police made clear straight after the accident.
My understanding is that they were Pokemon friends and they were out doing that. They weren't doing it at the time. They were crossing, the information we have at this stage is that they were crossing the lights legally.
When Tanamai's parents came out on Monday to say the media had got it wrong, the Courier Mail backed down by removing her picture and all mention from their online story. And Channel 9 obviously did the same, because when you clicked on this headline, it took you to this.
Sorry, we can't find the page you requested.
But news obviously didn't filter through to No Idea, which still has this up on its website today.
Australian woman killed playing Pokemon Go. Shocking.
Shocking indeed. They got that bit right at least. But it's not the first time the media's got it wrong in the mad rush to find Pokemon stories. Here's 7 News Brisbane from last month.
A video game that actually encourages you to get outside and move around can be good for your health, but authorities say just be careful mixing the virtual and real world. To avoid accidents like this, a crash in the US caused by a driver stopping to collect a Pikachu.
So much for the real world. Had they bothered to check, they could have found out that Pokemon Crash had already been exposed as an internet hoax.
Pokemon, stop. Fact check. Fake news? False.
And some journalists aren't just writing about Pokemon, as you can see from this clip of a recent State Department briefing in Washington on the much more real threat posed by Islamic State.
I think it's an important reminder. You're playing the Pokemon thing right there, aren't you?
I'm just keeping an eye on it.
Did you get one?
No, the signal's not very good.
Sorry about that.
And finally, tonight, to an awkward moment in television, and the departure of 9 Melbourne's weather presenter Rebecca Judd, who is leaving to have twins.
Also, it's the last time that we'll be working together for a little while because you're off on a break.
Hello.
Yes, Tony, giving birth to those twins of yours.
Yeah.
We'll all miss you, but of course everyone in the newsroom sends much love and very best wishes.
Thank you. I'll miss you all too. Wish me luck. I'm going to need it.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the Carlton supporters are very excited.
Well, they should be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good luck, Nick.
Ooh.
OK, good. This is going well.
You're funny. All right, now, Melbourne, that's what's news this Monday. Enjoy your evening and good night.
And was that funny or just plain embarrassing? Nine's Melbourne sports reporter Tony Jones was soon taking to Twitter to confess.
Well, that was #awkward.
To which the departing presenter graciously replied,
You know I love you.
But we can only hope that Tony does not mistake that for a come-on, because another attempt would win him the trifecta, given that he and Rebecca already have form in this department.
It's nice and sunny for the weekend.
You should come round for a barbie.
No, thanks.
OK, that's all our news from now.
And that's all from us too. And you can read more about tonight's stories on our Facebook page or our website, where you can get a transcript and download the programme. You can also catch up with us on iView and contact me or MediaWatch on Twitter. But for now, until next week, that's it from us. Goodbye.